Sands Hotel, Las Vegas, 3:47 p.m. Dean Martin stood at the edge of the shimmering pool, a towel draped over his shoulder, squinting through the desert sun at his friend Sammy Davis Jr., sitting 30 feet away. Fully dressed, black suit, white shirt, tie perfectly knotted, dress shoes polished to a mirror shine. In 105-degree heat. Dean waved. "Sammy, get in here, pal. Water's perfect." Sammy smiled, that trademark million-watt smile. But he didn't move. Dean noticed something in Sammy's eyes, something that didn't match the smile, something sad. Dean swam to the edge, climbed out, water streaming off his tanned shoulders. He walked over, his wet footprints darkening the scorching concrete. "Sammy, what are you doing over there? Come cool off." Sammy glanced toward the hotel entrance. A man in a crisp manager's uniform stood there, arms crossed, watching them. Sammy looked back at Dean. "Can't, Dean. Pool's not for me." Dean's face showed confusion. "What do you mean, not for you? You're performing here tonight. You're headlining. "I'm black, Dean." The words hung in the 105-degree air like smoke. Dean looked at the pool, then at Sammy, then at the small, discreet sign posted near the entrance he hadn't noticed before. Pool reserved for hotel guests only. It didn't say whites only. Everyone knew what it meant. Dean Martin stared at his friend sitting there in the brutal heat, looked at the hotel manager watching them, looked at the other guests in the pool, all white, all comfortable, all oblivious. Then Robert Brennan, the pool manager, walked over, and what happened in the next 10 seconds would force Las Vegas to change forever. To understand why this moment mattered, you need to understand what Las Vegas was in 1960. On the surface, the most progressive city in America. The Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr. performing together, equal billing, same stage, breaking barriers. But that was only on stage. The moment the show ended, segregation resumed. In 1960, black performers could entertain in Vegas casinos, could make the hotels millions of dollars, could bring down the house every single night. But they couldn't stay in those hotels as guests, couldn't eat in the restaurants, couldn't gamble in the casinos, and they definitely couldn't use the pool. The pool was the ultimate symbol of segregation. Southern pools had been sites of massive resistance. Photos of white people pouring acid into pools while black children swam had shocked the nation. Vegas hotels weren't going to risk it. Sammy knew this, had lived with it his entire career, the contradiction of being celebrated on stage and degraded off it. He'd learned to swallow the humiliation, to smile, to not make waves, because making waves meant losing work, and Sammy needed work. He had massive debts, an entourage to support, ex-wives to pay. Sammy couldn't afford to fight every battle. But Dean Martin didn't know about the rule. Dean had never paid attention to these things, not because he didn't care, because he was white. He'd never had to think about which pool he could use, which restaurant would serve him, which entrance he was allowed. Dean's ignorance was about to end. Robert Brennan approached them with quick, nervous steps. "Mr. Martin, could I speak to you for a moment?" Dean looked up from his conversation with Sammy. "Sure, Bob. What's up?" Brennan glanced at Sammy, then back at Dean. "Privately, sir?" "Nah, say what you need to say." Brennan shifted his weight. Sweat beaded on his forehead, not from the heat. "Mr. Martin, I need to ask that Mr. Davis doesn't enter the pool area." "Why not?" "Hotel policy, sir." "That's not an answer. Why can't Sammy swim in this pool?" The silence lasted 3 seconds. Then Brennan said it. "We don't allow—" He lowered his voice, glanced around. "We don't allow coloreds in the pool, Mr. Martin. It's nothing personal, just policy." The word hung there. Coloreds. Dean's face went completely still. Sammy stood up from his chair. "Dean, it's okay. I was just leaving anyway." Dean held up one hand. His eyes never left Brennan's face. "Say that again," Dean said quietly. Brennan's face faltered. "Mr. Martin, I'm just doing my job." "Say that again." Brennan's face went red. I said we don't allow Dean moved. Not violently, not aggressively. He simply stepped between Brennan and Sammy. Then, Dean Martin, the laid-back, easy-going crooner who never made waves, who always went with the flow, who joked his way through every conflict, looked Robert Brennan in the eye, and his voice dropped to ice. "You've got exactly 10 seconds to get Jack Entrader down here, because here's what's about to happen, Bob. Either you change that policy right now, or I walk off my show tonight, and I call Frank, and I call Joey, and I call Peter, and none of us perform, ever, again, at this hotel." Brennan's face went from red to white. "Mr. Martin, please." 10 seconds, Bob. I'm counting." "Sir, you don't understand the backlash." 9. "Our guests expect..." 8. Brennan pulled out his walkie-talkie with shaking hands. "This is Brennan. I need Mr. Entrader at the pool, immediately. We have a situation." The walkie-talkie crackled. "On my way." Dean didn't move, didn't blink, just stood there between Brennan and Sammy, a human wall. Sammy touched Dean's shoulder. "Dean, you don't have to do this. I'm used to..." "Used to it? Sammy, you shouldn't have to be used to being treated like you're less than human." "I appreciate it, but this is how it is." "Not anymore, it's not." 3 minutes later, Jack Entrader arrived. Casino manager, former Copacabana bouncer, big man, iron fist, ran the sands like a military operation. He took one look at the scene. Dean standing between his pool manager and Sammy Davis Jr., 40 guests watching in dead silence, and understood immediately. "Dean, Sammy, what's going on?" Dean spoke first. "Jack, your manager just told me Sammy can't swim in this pool. Used the word coloreds. I need you to explain to me why not." Entrader looked at Brennan, whose face had gone the color of old newspaper. "Bob, did you..." "I was following policy, Mr. Entrader, just like you..." "Shut up, Bob." Entrader turned back to Dean. "Dean, listen, it's complicated." "Uncomplicated." "We have concerns about how our guests will react." Dean gestured around the pool. "Jack, Sammy is your guest. He's staying here. He's performing here. His name is on your marquee right next to mine. So explain to me why he can't swim in your pool." Entrader had no answer, because there wasn't one. Dean continued, voice still calm, still controlled. "Here's how this works, Jack. You've got 2 choices. Choice 1, you tell Bob here that any performer who works at this hotel can use any facility in this hotel, pool included, right now. Choice 2, the Rat Pack is done. We pack up, we leave, and you can explain to your bosses why you lost millions of dollars because you wanted to keep one pool segregated." The entire pool area was silent, 40 people holding their breath. Entrader looked at Dean's face, saw he meant every word. Looked at Sammy, saw the tears forming in his friend's eyes. Looked at the pool, at the guests, at the money and reputation and everything on the line. He made his choice. "Bob," Entrader said quietly, "the policy is changed, effective immediately. Any performer who works at the Sands has full access to all facilities, including the pool." Brennan opened his mouth. "That wasn't a suggestion, Bob. That was an order. You got a problem with it? There's the door." Brennan closed his mouth, walked away. Dean turned to Sammy, extended his hand. "Come on, pal. Water's getting cold." They jumped together, still holding hands. The splash was enormous. When they surfaced, both were laughing. The pool area stayed silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then one person started clapping, then another. Then the entire pool area erupted in applause. Dean and Sammy swam for the next hour, floated, talked, enjoyed the water like two friends on a summer afternoon, which is exactly what they were. Other guests gradually returned to normal. Conversations resumed. Children went back to playing, but everyone who was there knew they'd witnessed something. A line had been crossed, and there was no going back. The next day, the Sands Hotel officially changed its policy. Black performers could use all hotel facilities, pool included. Word spread through Vegas like wildfire. Within a week, the Flamingo quietly dropped its pool restrictions. Within a month, the Desert Inn followed. Within a year, most major Vegas hotels had eliminated pool segregation, not from moral conviction, but because Dean Martin showed them the math. If you want the best performers, you treat them with respect, or you lose them.
The story became legend in Vegas, whispered in dressing rooms, told to new performers, passed down like sacred history. But here's the part most people don't know. 6 years later, 1966, Robert Brennan, the pool manager who'd used that word, who'd enforced that policy, lost his job at the Sands. Not because of the incident, just normal casino politics. He struggled to find work. His reputation had followed him. Nobody wanted to hire the guy who'd tried to ban Sammy Davis Jr. from a pool. He was broke, desperate, had a wife and 2 kids to support. One night, he showed up at the stage door of the Sands, asked to see Dean Martin. Dean's assistant came out. "Mr. Brennan, Mr. Martin is preparing for his show. He can't—" "Please," Brennan said. 5 minutes. I just need 5 minutes." The assistant disappeared. 3 minutes later, Dean Martin came out, still in his bathrobe, hair half-combed. Show starting in 20 minutes. He looked at Brennan. "Bob, what can I do for you?" Brennan couldn't meet his eyes. "Mr. Martin, I need to apologize for what I said that day, for what I did. I was wrong. I was following orders, but that's no excuse. I was wrong." Dean was quiet for a moment. "You hungry, Bob?" "What?" "I asked if you're hungry. You look like you haven't eaten in a week." I'm fine, Mr. Martin. I just wanted to say—" Dean turned to his assistant. "Get Bob here some food. And a drink. Something strong." He looked back at Brennan. "You wait here. After the show, we'll talk." After the show, Dean sat with Robert Brennan for 2 hours. They talked about Vegas, about family, about how hard it is to change when the whole world tells you not to. "You know what the hardest thing is, Bob?" Dean said, sipping his scotch. "It's not standing up for what's right. That part's easy. The hard part is forgiving the people who stood for what was wrong." Brennan's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your forgiveness." "Maybe not, but I'm giving it anyway. You know why?" Brennan shook his head. "Because Sammy would. Because that's what he taught me. That when someone realizes they were wrong and actually tries to change, you don't kick them, you help them up." Dean made a phone call that night. The next week, Robert Brennan had a job at the Riviera. Nothing fancy, night shift supervisor, but it was work, honest work. Brennan worked there for 18 years, retired in 1984, never spoke publicly about what happened at the pool until a year before he died. Then he gave one interview. "Dean Martin saved my life twice. Once when he forced me to see how wrong I was, and once when he showed me that people can change. That's grace, real grace. I spent 18 years trying to earn what he gave me for free that night." Sammy Davis Jr. spoke about that day in the pool dozens of times over the years. Always the same story, always the same emotion. "Dean Martin changed Las Vegas that afternoon," Dean said in 1986. "Not with speeches, not with protests, with friendship. He looked at me sitting in that heat, realized what was happening, and said, 'No, not on my watch.' That's who Dean was. When it mattered, when someone he loved was being treated wrong, Dean didn't calculate, didn't worry about his career. He just acted." Dean's version was typically modest. "Sammy was my friend. Someone said he couldn't swim because he was black. That was stupid, so we swam. End of story." But it wasn't the end of the story. That single act, Dean Martin refusing to swim while his friend couldn't, rippled through Las Vegas, through the entertainment industry, through America. Not because it was planned, not because it was strategic, because it was human. The lesson of Dean and Sammy at the pool isn't about grand gestures. It's simpler than that, and harder. When you see injustice happening to someone you care about, you don't calculate the cost. You don't worry about consequences. You don't wait for someone else to fix it. You stand up, right then, right there. Dean Martin could have ignored it, could have enjoyed his swim and pretended not to notice Sammy sitting in the heat, sweating through his suit. Most people did. Most people did. But Dean didn't. Because to Dean, Sammy wasn't just a colleague, wasn't just a performer, wasn't just the guy he shared a stage with. He was a brother. And you don't let your brother be humiliated while you do nothing. That's the real story of the Rat Pack. Not the glamour, not the fame, not the parties or the women or the sold-out shows. It's Dean Martin standing between a bigoted pool manager and his friend.
It's Dean holding Sammy's hand and jumping into a pool together. It's Dean forcing Las Vegas to choose, change or lose us both. Vegas chose change, not because of laws, not because of protests, because of Dean Martin, because of friendship, because of the simple, powerful act of saying, if my friend isn't welcome, neither am I. 10 seconds, that's all it took. 10 seconds for Dean Martin to draw a line in the sand, or in this case, at the edge of a pool, and say, no more. 10 seconds to change a city. 10 seconds to show the world what real friendship looks like. And 60 years later, we're still talking about it. Because courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it's quiet. Sometimes it's just a hand extended. A friend who refuses to swim while you can't. A voice that says, not on my watch. That's Dean Martin. That's friendship. That's grace.